Hello and welcome to the Strike Show. I'm your host, Sean Hartnett, and with me as ever is Sound Encapsulator. Is that one? Is that a word?
Why not? Let's just call it that. It's better than the last two, so fine.
As ever, we'll just dive straight in. Why fuck about? We have a shitload of migrant news again. We have clashes between riot police and migrants angry at being prevented from entering Macedonia from Greece have left up to 40 people injured. Macedonian soldiers raised a new fence on the southern border with Greece on Saturday to manage the migrants. Dozens of migrants stuck in Greece after Balkan countries imposed tougher entry conditions threw stones. Reports suggest that Macedonian police briefly entered Greece and fired stun grenades on the rioters. Macedonia's Interior Ministry says that 18 police officers were injured, with 2 hospitalized. Some 20 migrants were treated for head injuries and breathing problems, aid groups told the Associated Press news agency. The International Organization for Migration says 105,000 migrants have passed through Macedonia after arriving in Greece this month. Mad on. Yeah, I mean, it's... And these are the people that want to be let in. Like, this is the way they welcome themselves. This is the way they introduce themselves and say, hey, we're here, we're peaceful, just want to work, just want to make some money, yada, yada, yada. Yeah, throw stones. I mean, I've seen so many different videos of, like, people throwing stones at train drivers. That one where the guy goes to donate some clothes and, like, again... In the last podcast we mentioned the monkey comparison. Literally like a gang of monkeys at a zoo when they take, those drive-through zoos where the monkeys come and they rip off the windshield wipers and the mirrors and stuff. They attack this guy with the bag of clothes. They fleece his pockets. They start like trying to strip him. Like it's ridiculous. Gangs of like kids, adults, everything. It's across every kind of denomination. And it's just like you can see the moment in his eyes where he changes from leftist to the next Hitler. Like it's such a tragic transformation. Like to actually go through firsthand, you kind of think, well, if you will insist on being those people, that's what will happen. So, it's like, how many times do you need to see this? How many stones need to be thrown? How many windows need to be broken? How many people need to be threatened? How many crimes need to happen before you realize this system isn't working? This opening the floodgate system simply isn't working. All the deaths on the Mediterranean, all the deaths in the fucking Calais tunnel through electrocution, all the rapes that are happening to women who are part of the minority, because it's only less than 15% of women that are actually coming through. 70% men, 15% women, 15% kids. Across all migrants, by the way, that is 70% men. The minority of women are being raped in these camps, especially in the Calais camp, the jungle as it's called. How many fucking people need to have this happen to them before you realize this is way worse than what was happening before? The system we had before was working. Slowly but surely people were allowed to come in and assimilate and adopt a culture, and it didn't poison the collective pool. Everything was still stable and fine. But when you overdo it, you ruin the pool. You kind of, you dirty it. Like, you can put a certain amount of pollution into a fucking lake and it's fine. You can piss into a lake and it's fine. It's not going to be all piss. It can absorb it. It can chemical some stuff and it's fine. It absorbs it as water and everything happens. The cycle continues. But if you just unload, if you put a sewerage tank directly into that lake, slowly but surely it will become more poisoned and you will never get that back. You can't depollute a lake. You just have to drain it and start over, so it's this system clearly isn't working. But we'll move on to the next story. We have Muslim comedians in Pakistan denounce Paris attackers. We have a comedy trio from Pakistan that has taken a stand against the abuse of Islam by those who carried out the attacks in Paris. Usman Ahmed, Afzar Imtiaz and Zishan Butt say they will not apologize for the actions taken by a very few deranged individuals. Yeah, I mean, it's this hypocrisy that I fucking hate where, they say, oh, it's not done by Muslims, it's not all Muslims, they don't represent Islam, they're not Muslims, yada, yada, yada. And yet, the only reason I mention this story is because there is another story in the papers this week. American Muslims raise more than $100,000 for families of San Bernardino shooting victims. Again, another incident completely unrelated with religion, but it's, completely related with religion, that killed, I think it was 14 people. Yeah, 14 people. And of course, these Muslims who did something good, their actions are part of Islam. That's fine. They are Muslims. And not only that, they're good Muslims. But potato, right? All Muslims are good. That's fine. But the bad actions undertaken by Muslims, no, they're not Muslims. No, they're shunned. They're cast out. They're yada, yada, yada. And it simply doesn't work like that until you acknowledge the good with the bad, until you acknowledge the link between these issues, between religion and violence, between you acknowledge the different levels of severity within certain communities and a penchant for violence. Clearly, Islam is more dangerous than the Amish. That is undeniable. No one's fearing a terrorist attack from the Amish. You can't be this in denial to think that all religions are the same and that they're completely unrelated. And it's such hypocrisy to claim credit for the good stuff, but to completely renege of any responsibility for the bad stuff. You can't fucking do it that way. That's not the system. That isn't the way. That's hypocrisy. It's the definition of hypocrisy. But again, we had it in relation to that San Bernardino shooting, where, we had it in Paris, and now we have it with the other terrorist atrocity. Well, it's not really an atrocity, it's an incident really, that happened here in London last week, in fact, where down in Leytonstone station last Saturday, a guy who started shouting about ISIS and all this kind of thing stabbed a guy fairly seriously. I think he's all right now. I don't think he died. But he was like shouting. It was clearly a terrorist incident. But of course, now this is a new thing where terrorist incidents aren't even allowed to be acknowledged as terrorist incidents. You had that with the San Bernardino shooting. That was genuinely considered a workplace violence issue by certain liberal and leftist media sensations. They weren't calling it a terrorist incident, even though eventually they found like 19 pipe bombs in their fucking flat. They found blueprints for certain schools that were near them, and then eventually the FBI acknowledged, yeah, it is a terrorist thing, and then all these other news organizations had to backtrack and say, actually, yeah, it is. It's not a workplace thing. But you have that now with the smaller the terrorist incident, the more you can kind of convince people that it is actually just a workplace thing, or stress. That was another thing I saw. Stress was the cause and nothing to do with religion, even though he was shouting about it as he fucking died. But this exactly feeds into what I was saying before about how this hashtag "You Ain't No Muslim Bruv" started this week, and it's just like you can't fucking do that. You can't gerrymander which Muslims you do and don't want as part of your little cult. You can't fucking do that. It's not the way the membership works. It's not like being part of Mensa, where there's an actual little card or something, or you apply and there's only certain people allowed. No, religion is you declare yourself something, you're that thing. There is no validation, no qualification, no nothing. You just say it and then you become that thing. You don't have a right to take away that guy's Muslim status, the terrorist guy's, than he does yours. That's not the way this works. I know you want to eschew any responsibility and any, link to your little organization, but that isn't the way it works. You just have to accept that he was a Muslim and stop denying it, because the more you do an insult to the victims' families who suffered at the hands of these fucking barbarians. But yeah, of course, naturally enough, with a fairly popular hashtag online, the politicians even got involved, and David Cameron himself, no less, used the phrase in a speech. But it's beyond naive. You ain't no Muslim, bruv. What? No, he was. He really was. Do you want to know why he was? Because he was. That's how that works. When someone is something, they are something. End. So we have another, speaking of hashtag news, another hashtag, Sunni Saudi. Twitter users taunt Saudi Arabia. We have The hashtag Sunni Saudi is soaring after a source at the... Jesus, like a tongue twister. The hashtag Sunni Saudi is soaring after a source at the Saudi and Arabian Justice Ministry reportedly said he would sue a Twitter user who compared Saudi Arabia to the terror group Islamic State. The Justice Ministry official was quoted by the government-aligned Al Riyadh newspaper as saying the Justice Ministry will sue the person who described the sentencing of a man to death for apostasy as being ISIS-like. The guy's an atheist, and as such, that merits death in this community. But that is nothing like what ISIS do. No. See, it's completely different. See, Saudi Arabia will hang a guy, but ISIS will probably stone him or blast him with a bazooka or like drown him. Or I mean, they're very creative individuals. You got to hand it to them. They know how to put together a video that goes viral. They know how to do it. They're very good marketing people. I don't know who they got working for them, but fair fucks to them. You know, their editing, second to none. But, of course, that's nothing like Saudi Arabia. No, see, Saudi Arabia is a state. Saudi Arabia has a king. You know, Saudi Arabia is like, it's got businesses and I guess they've got currency. ISIS doesn't have these things yet. No, so it's completely different. No, it's fine. So, yeah, that was going around. But, of course, the heathens and the infidels who were saying that they are like, presumably, death to them as well. Although I'm sure they're included in the subset of death to the West, so it's fine. It's not a new death. We have, let me think. We have, this is a really good one. I saw a video this week. We have a Muslim student asks why Islam is being portrayed as bad instead of attacking the jihadist ideology. She gets the perfect answer. Listen to this. It's poetry.
Assalamu alaikum. Peace to you all. My name is Saba Ahmed. I'm a law student at American University. I am here to ask you a simple question. I know that we portray Islam and all Muslims as bad, but there's 1.8 billion Muslim followers of Islam. We have 8 million plus Muslim Americans in this country, and I don't see them represented here. But my question is, how can we fight an ideological war with weapons? How can we ever end this war? The jihadist ideology that you talk about, it's an ideology. How can you ever win this thing if you don't address it ideologically?
Great question. I am so glad you're here, and I am so glad you brought that up because it gives us an opportunity to answer. What I find so amazing is since the beginning of this panel, which we are here about Benghazi attack against our people, not one person mentioned Muslims. We are here against Islam, or we're launching war against Muslims. We are here to discuss how 4 Americans died and what our government is doing. We were not here to bash Muslims. You were the one who brought up the issue about most Muslims, not us. And since you brought it up, allow me to elaborate with my answer. There are 1.2 billion Muslims in the world today. Of course, not all of them are radicals. The majority of them are peaceful people. The radicals are estimated to be between 15 to 25%, according to all intelligence services around the world. That leaves 75% of them peaceful people. But when you look at 15 to 25% of the world Muslim population, you're looking at 180 million to 300 million people dedicated to the destruction of Western civilization. That is as big of the United States. So why should we worry about the radicals, 15 to 25%? Because it is the radicals that kill. Because it is the radicals that behead and massacre. When you look throughout history, when you look at all the lessons of history, most Germans were peaceful. Yet the Nazis drove the agenda. And as a result, 60 million people died. Almost 14 million in concentration camps. 6 million were Jews. The peaceful majority were irrelevant. When you look at Russia, most Russians were peaceful as well. Yet the Russians were able to kill 20 million people. The peaceful majority were irrelevant. When you look at China, for example, most Chinese were peaceful as well. Yet the Chinese were able to kill 70 million people. The peaceful majority were irrelevant. When you look at Japan prior to World War II, most Japanese were peaceful as well. Yet Japan was able to butcher its way across Southeast Asia, killing 12 million people, mostly killed with bayonets and shovels. The peaceful majority were irrelevant. On September 11th in the United States, we had 2.3 million Arab Muslims living in the United States. It took 19 hijackers, 19 radicals to bring America down to its knees, destroy the World Trade Center, attack the Pentagon, and kill almost 3,000 Americans that day. The peaceful majority were irrelevant. So for all our powers of reasons and us talking about moderate and peaceful Muslims, I'm glad you're here. But where are the others speaking out? And since you are the only Muslim representative, save the applause till the end. And since you're the only Muslim representative in here, you took the limelight instead of speaking about why our government, and I assume, are you an American? You're an American citizen. So as an American citizen, you sat in this room and instead of standing up and saying a question or asking something about our 4 Americans that died and what our government is doing to correct the problem, you stood there to make a point about peaceful, moderate Muslims. I wish you brought 10 with you to question about how we can hold our government responsible. It is time we take political correctness and throw it in the garbage where it belongs and start calling it.
Christ, I want to marry that woman. Fuck me. That was perfection. Oh my God. I'm just in shock. I mean, that's like the perfect answer, you know? It was just so well encapsulated. It was like, much like you with sound, Michael. Well encapsulated. It was just terse. It was sharp. It was on point. It was backed up by statistics and figures. It said fuck you to political correctness and just spoke the truth regardless of people's feelings. It made valid points about why this woman brought that specific question up and the smug, satisfied fucking, look on her face as she just reveled in her own inappropriateness at a panel that had nothing to do with that. It was about fucking Benghazi. It was about the 4 people that died there and holding the American government accountable. And yet again, they fucking, if you'll excuse the pun, hijack it and just basically make it all about them. Everything is about them. It's just so fucking tiring, and especially when it's so illogical and unfounded. Anyway, I couldn't have said it any better than she said it, so I'm just going to leave it there. In other news, it's not really news to be honest, but I saw this thing. I was just Googling North Korea because why not? And I found this thing. It's called the Horyong concentration camp. Now, North Korea has its own concentration camp, like now in modern day. Not retrospectively, not around World War II when everyone was doing it, when it was popular. Just wanted to be part of the cool kids. No, this is now. It says, Horyong concentration camp is a political prison camp in North Korea. The official name is Kwan-il-so, penal labor colony number 22, which presumably means fucking 20 more of them, but 21 more of them. How can I say that? The camp is a maximum security area, completely isolated from the outside world. Prisoners and their families are held in lifelong detention. In 2012, the satellite image analysis and reports indicated major changes. So, in case you didn't know, North Korea does this thing called generational punishment, where if you're caught being a dissident, you could have been doing anything. You could have been speaking bad about Kim Jong-un. You could have just been saying, I'm not really too keen on this policy, or you could have just been thieving. Any crime really. Punishing you isn't enough. They grab your kids and then they also grab your parents, and all 3 of you, all 3 generations go to jail. So, this is a place where basically they keep them. It's a labor camp, but it's more like a concentration camp. It's the atrocities that happen here, nowadays, is just insane. Listen to this. It says, conditions in the camp. Former guard An Myong-chol describes the conditions in the camp as harsh and life-threatening. He recalls the shock he felt upon his first arrival at the camp, where he likened the prisoners to walking skeletons, dwarves, and cripples in rags. And don't worry, that wasn't Michael laughing. It was him coughing. Anne estimates that about 30% of the prisoners have deformities such as torn off ears, smashed eyes, crooked noses, and faces covered with cuts and scars resulting from beatings and other mistreatment. Around 2,000 prisoners, he says, have missing limbs, but even prisoners who need crutches must have to walk to work. Prisoners get 180 grams of corn per meal 2 times a day, with almost no vegetables and no meat. The only meat in their diets is from rats, snakes, or frogs that they catch. Anne estimates that 1,500 to 2,000 people die of malnutrition there every year, mostly children. Despite these deaths, the inmate population remains constant, suggesting that around 1,500 to 2,000 new inmates arrive each year. Children only get a very basic education. From 6 years on, they get work assigned, Jesus, such as picking vegetables, peeling corn, or drying rice, but they receive very little food, only 100 grams in total per day. Therefore, many children die before the age of 10 years. Elderly prisoners have the same work requirements as other adults. Seriously ill prisoners are quarantined, abandoned, and left to die. Single prisoners live in bunkhouses with 100 people in one room. As a reward for good work, families are often allowed to live together in a single room of a small house without running water. But the houses are in poor conditions, the walls are made from mud and have a lot of cracks. All prisoners have to use dirty and crowded communal toilets. Prisoners have to do hard physical labor in agriculture, mining, and factories from 5 a.m. to 8 p.m., 7 p.m. in winter, because Kim's a good guy, followed by ideological re-education. It's literally 1984. And self-criticism sessions. Now that bit's like Scientology. New Year's Day is the only holiday for prisoners. The mines, I would assume so, because they need to be able to tell the passing of time somehow. If there's nothing else, that's the equivalent to like a scratch on a wall marking your time. That stops them from going insane, because they didn't know the time, they didn't know anything, they wouldn't know how old they are, they wouldn't know anything. The mines are not equipped with safety measures, and according to Anne, prisoners were killed almost every day. They have to use primitive tools such as shovels and picks, and are forced to work to exhaustion. When there was a fire or a tunnel collapse, prisoners were abandoned inside and left to die. Kwon Hyuk reported that corpses are simply loaded into cargo coaches together with the coal to be burnt in a melting furnace. The coal is supplied to Chongyin Power Plant, Chongyin Steel Mill, and Kimchek Steel Mill, whilst the food is supplied to the State Security Agency or sold in Pyongyang and other parts of the country. It's unbelievable. Like, a place like that actually exists on this planet. And it's state-run. It's not even like some fucking, like some almost hostel-esque type private business. No, it's fucking like a state does that. And then Dennis Rodman goes over there and treats that man like a serious human being. Not that he's any ambassador or anything, but how can anyone take him seriously? I think that speaks so fucking poorly about Dennis Rodman that he can overlook that shit. It makes him look like a fucking buffoon. How people can treat with this person. Even the Chinese should be held equally as accountable, not equally, but certainly accountable somewhat, because they're one of the only countries that have still maintained positive relations with North Korea. They don't have any sanctions, to the best of my knowledge, with them. They treat them as legitimately as any other country. It's fucking unbelievable. It says about human experimentation. Kwon reported about human experimentation carried out in Hyangyong. He described a sealed glass chamber 3.5 meters wide, 3 meters long, and 2.2 meters high, where he witnessed a family with 2 children dying from being test subjects for a suffocating gas. An explained how inexperienced medical officers of Chung Bon Yi Hospital practiced their surgery techniques on prisoners. He heard numerous accounts of unnecessary operations and medical flaws, killing or permanently crippling prisoners. This is what fucking Joseph Mengele, the angel of death during the World War II for Hitler, did. This is exactly what he did. The experiments. And this happens modern day. I don't understand the specifications for like how you can declare war on a country, like what technically they need to be doing. Like I know World War II was basically started when Hitler invaded Poland, but surely all the other shit, the reports of like, you know, the experiments on you know, trying to get twins to unlock the formula for twins, because obviously, you know, if you're planning on building an army, it'd be really handy if you could just build twice as much people. But all these things must have added up. The fact that the Nazis have gone down in history as one of the worst people ever, clearly it means that they've done some pretty horrific shit. It was stuff like this. If this is happening nowadays, like, what is the impetus to end it? Because you hear, like, you know, NATO and the UN and all this kind of thing talk about Africa and the Middle East quite a lot. But what about places like this that are still doing it? That, you know, that on a systematic state government level, what is the impetus? What needs to be the catalyst for change? But yeah. Anyway, speaking of China, we had a fairly serious incident this week. It says Beijing smog red alert schools and businesses to completely shut down as Chinese capital issues first ever extreme warning. Beijing has issued a first ever red alert over the city's smog, with the Chinese capital going into shutdown in an attempt to protect people from the deadly air. It is the first time ever that the highest possible state of caution has been declared in the city, which has more than 21 million residents. The warning means schools will have to close down and construction and other industry in the capital will be limited. Smog levels are actually low in comparison to what they have been in recent weeks, but authorities expect an extreme amount of pollution over the coming days and have imposed the order to ensure safety during that time. The order will last from Tuesday morning local time until midday Thursday, when the weather is expected to change and blow away the smog. The city had already been in a state of orange alert, which meant that some construction and industry was being curbed. The city had also issued a ruling that said cars with odd and even number plates would be stopped from driving on alternate days. It's a bit of a bizarre ruling, but I guess it kind of makes sense, you know, limiting it by half. The opposite of Hitler's solution, which is actually a kind of a weird thing I read about. There's police here in this country as well, in certain rural parts of England, that were found to have, they were answering calls and going out and sending men to certain types of crimes, depending on whether or not the person's phone number was an odd or an even number, because that's how limited their resources were. So it was purely chance. It was a toss of the coin whether or not you were going to have your case taken seriously. So obviously people heard about this and thought it was ridiculous and stuff. So I don't know what's being done on a policy level, but I mean, if that's the fucking state, you know, they need to get some more resources up there. You can't be having that 50% of crime going unsolved. China has decided to end its decades-long one-child policy, the state-run Xinhua News Agency reports. Couples will now be allowed to have 2 children, it said, citing a statement from the Communist Party. The controversial policy was introduced nationally in 1979 to slow the population growth rate. It is estimated to have prevented about 400 million births. However, concerns at China's aging population led to a pressure for change. Couples who violated the one-child policy faced a variety of punishments, from fines and the loss of employment to forced abortions. Over time, the policy has been relaxed in some provinces as demographers and sociologists raised concerns about rising social costs and falling worker numbers. So yeah, that was always a weird one, wasn't it? That was always a weird kind of law that you wondered how they policed it. Not only because it's so personal, but also because of the sheer numbers you were dealing with. They're, north of 1 billion? Like, how specifically were they found? And, you know, you wonder exactly the dynamics of it, like if anyone ever got away with it. I suppose if you had to register the kid, you know, probably not. They'd, you know, probably come knocking sometime soon to get their fucking vig. But yeah, we're gonna move on to some different type of news now. We have some interesting tech news this week. Have you heard about this thing, Michael? It's called Li-Fi. It's essentially a different type of Wi-Fi. It says Li-Fi is 100 times faster than Wi-Fi. It says a new method of delivering data which uses the visible spectrum rather than radio waves has been tested in a working office. Li-Fi can deliver internet speeds 100 times faster than traditional Wi-Fi, offering speeds of up to 1 gigabyte per second. Fucking hell, 1 gigabyte per second. In the future, that's going to sound like when, people used to say, oh my God, you've got like a 30 kilobyte hard drive. It's like, but Jesus Christ, 1 gigabyte per second. But the thing is, before you start getting all excited and start Googling Li-Fi and how do you get it and all this kind of thing, there are a few drawbacks. It's essentially, it's like Wi-Fi, but Wi-Fi is radio waves, so it can work through walls and stuff. It's like, sound based or frequencies and things like that. But Li-Fi is the visual spectrum, so it travels on light. So if it's blocked by something where light can't pass through, then that's where it ends. So it can only be in a really wide room, like a warehouse or some kind of office or something. You can't go having it for your own personal house because there's too many walls and doors and things like that. So yeah, it said many use a Li-Fi enabled light bulb to transmit data at speeds of 1 gigabyte per second. Laboratory tests have shown theoretical speeds of up to 224 gigabytes per second. It was tested in an office to allow workers to access the internet and in an industrial space where it provided a smart lighting solution. Speaking to the International Business Times, Chief Executive Deepak Solanki said that the technology could reach consumers within 3 to 4 years. It says how Li-Fi sends data. The visible light spectrum is 10,000 times larger than the radio waves we use for Wi-Fi today. Information can be encoded in light pulses, just like in traditional TV remotes. Modern LEDs, however, could transmit enough data for a stable broadband connection, but still look like a normal white light. So I guess the closest equivalent that we have that is, fairly in use is, do you remember back in the day when like remotes had the little red light on the end, and that was LED? That's like the Christmas lights and stuff. Except that little light obviously sent a command to your TV and it got it to switch the channel or volume or whatever. So it's like that, but it's permanent. So that little light would be on and you would see like a little light bulb or something on your router, and then that would transmit the data directly. So yeah, Li-Fi. You'll be hearing all the cool kids will be talking about it soon. So we have, this is a good one. We have, I couldn't believe I fucking saw this earlier on this week. A trans woman lives her life as a 6-year-old girl. Okay? So, not only is he transgender and, he's gone from being a man to a woman apparently, but now he's actually gone back and regressed. Not even regressed, because it would be regression if it went back to a 6-year-old boy. This is regression in like an opposite kind of ladder. This is regressing to a 6-year-old girl, which he never was. So, okay, if you needed any more reason to find this guy fucking absurd, his name that he's changed into is Stephanie Walsh, right? And what's so bad about that? Stephanie Walsh. It's grand. It's a grand name, wouldn't you say, Michael? Stephanie Walsh. It's fine. Stephanie, spelt S-T-E-F, so far so good, O-N-K-N-E-E, okay? Stefan knee, like the knee of your leg. Stefan knee. Walsh, not spelt in the traditional like Welsh or Irish sense of the word. You're thinking of Walsh in your mind right now. No, it's not that. Okay, W-O-L-S-C-H-T. Walshed or something. That's how you pronounce it phonetically. But no, it's just Walsh apparently. Stephanie Walshed. So as if that wasn't attention-seeking enough, we have a video here. Trans woman lives her life as 6-year-old girl.
Being a British guy in 2015 is not easy. The way we live,
Fucking ads. Get rid of it. I know. I should have ad blocker. This fucking iPad.
Stop being trans or leave. So that, to me, stop being trans isn't something I could do. It'd be like telling me to stop being, 6'2" or leave. And
If you need a visual for this guy, he looks like Danny McBride from Eastbound and Down in a blue dress with white tights and a blonde wig. Okay? He is fucking gargantuan.
I was who I was. I was trans before we married. I was a trans parent for 23 years.
Very transparent.
It floored me, it scared me, because I didn't know how to not be trans.
Stephanie Walsh, welcome to Daily Extra. You are one of the people profiled in the Transgender Project web series.
He clearly did know how to not be trans because he did it for all of his life. And no, he wasn't some recluse somewhere like some insane mental asylum inmate where he's just rocking back and forth until he became trans and then now he's all nice and happy. No, this is a guy, in case you needed any more of a reason to fucking hate him, he got married, he drew a woman into this ridiculousness, ruined her fucking life. He's been with her for, I think, 20 years, or 23 years, right? Ruined her life. Imagine that. A man you know for 23 years suddenly comes out with this to you. And as if that's not bad enough, he has 7 kids. He's done this with 7 kids. None of them speak to him anymore. He's just gone off on his own. And if you saw him, if you saw the visual, and if you need to see the visual, we're posting the link in the bottom of the video. Have a look at him. You'll know why the kids don't speak to him anymore.
Well, the TV show Am I a Boy or Girl? Why did you decide to go so public with your story?
I paid a pretty heavy price for transitioning, and so at a certain point, I thought, I've already lost everything and everything has happened. I'm going to be me, and I'm going to show other people that it's okay to be feminine for a guy. And so by coming completely out of the closet, it just liberated me to the point where let's do this, let's talk about it, and let people know that this is okay. 2007, when I actually stepped forward and started getting myself educated as to who I was and what this was, I was pretty naive.
But that naivete would quickly come to a crashing halt. At age 46, after 23 years of marriage and 7 kids, Stephanie realized she wasn't a crossdresser. She was transgender, a person whose gender is different than the sex they were assigned at birth.
I'm genderqueer, I'm queer, I'm queer.
So having said that, what have you heard from people?
A lot of feedback. There's a lot of positive feedback. There's a lot more people that are trans. Like, a lot of people come out to me. I get guys that you wouldn't think that want to.
He has the head of Michael Chiklis from the fucking Shield. You should see this thing. The neck, it's one of those necks where it segues into the jaw. Like, there's no definition. Like, there's no kind of like hourglass shaped thing. It's one of those like straight necks into the head. Like his above his collarbone looks like an erect penis, appropriately enough.
Like cops and bikers and can I wear a dress? So it gets very playful because you look at people and you think you understand what they're all about. You know, when you see a guy that's 300 pounds with a goatee who pulls in a Harley and is going through my closet and saying, can I wear this dress? Can I wear that dress? You know, or can I kiss you when I'm wearing the dress? You don't expect it.
That's right. Stephanie has moved on, believing that she will never be accepted by her wife and children. These days, she's got a job plowing snow and has a new family made up of friends and a new relationship.
Wait until you fucking hear this. This is gold. Okay, that was the transsexual element of the video. Now comes the next bit.
There's days I forget my past. I can actually go a week without even thinking about what was before. So it's a fresh start. It's interesting because it's new to me, and I'm getting accepted in a way I've never been. There's unconditional love. I'm starting to feel like we have a quasi-family that we're creating, and I'm allowed to be exactly who I am, and I don't have to apologize or make excuses why I'm different. I can't deny I was married. I can't deny I have children, but I've moved forward.
Lovely statement there. Can't deny he was married. Can't deny he has kids. As much as he might like to. The defeatist nature there. I can't deny I have a wife. I can't fucking deny I have kids either. Jesus Christ. You know, I mean, should I fucking use the condom? No, you know what? I can't deny I have kids. You know, I can't.
Now, I've gone back to being a child. I don't want to be an adult right now, and I just live my life like I couldn't when I was in.
No one does. No one wants to be a fucking adult. Who the fuck wants to be an adult? The only reason people want to be an adult is because as a kid, you're told, well, when you become an adult, you can do some stuff. And that stuff isn't even nearly as good as being a kid. Like, if you allowed kids to do what adults could do, everyone would choose to be a kid. Who doesn't want to be a fucking kid? That's not the way the world works, though. This guy, I almost called him she. This guy, the only reason he's allowed to get away with this is specifically because, as you're about to find out, people are enabling his behavior. He's found a family that supplements his income and apparently allows him to live his life as a 6-year-old girl. But the point is, if everyone did this, no one would be allowed. It wouldn't be Bugsy fucking Malone. Kids wouldn't be able to run the world. You would have to have some adults in order to, like, take care of other people and, you know, be the NHS and, you know, fucking pave roads and shit like that. What this is just self-indulgence. It's such like self-aggrandizing horseshit. It's like, it's so unique to him, you know. Oh, he's allowed to do it. Oh, why can't everyone do this? No, because we're not all fucking egotistical pricks. Some of us have responsibility. Some of us know our obligation in the world. We'd all love to fucking regress, but we can't. It's not the way it fucking works.
How are things in your life now?
Well, I have a mommy and daddy, adopted mommy and daddy, who are totally comfortable with me being a little girl, and their children.
You gotta see the fucking photos of this lump, twice the size of either of them, sat in the middle of a fucking couch with both of them having their arms wrapped around him. And they're exactly the same age, by the way. Both of those, they're late 50s, early 60s. This guy's fucking close. I would imagine he's in his, like, early 50s, from what I can guess. Like, these are his parents now. He's wearing a dress, sat in between them.
And their grandchildren are totally supportive. In fact, her youngest granddaughter,
Of course the children are supportive. What's the Jesuit phrase? Give me a child for the first 7 years of his life and I'll give you the man. Well, yeah, you can indoctrinate kids into any old horse shit. So kids are supportive. What the fuck does that mean? Yeah, do you know what kids also do? They don't know anything. They literally don't know anything. You have to teach a child. You have to say, like, you see that thing? That's fire. Don't touch that. If a child approves of you, it means sweet fuck all. It's the adults you need to worry about. The ones who actually know things, like the scientists and the teachers and the police.
A year ago I was 8 and she was 7. And she said to me, I want you to be the little sister, so I'll be 9. I said, well, I don't mind going to 6, so I've been 6 ever since.
Yeah, because that's the way it works.
We have a great time, and we color, we do kid stuff. It's called play therapy. No medication, no suicide thoughts, and I just get to play.
Yeah, that seems like a good alternative, doesn't it? Play therapy. Yeah, how about you try therapy? How about that? How about the shit that works for millions upon millions of people? Rather than indulging your fantasy. I mean, how it's like the homeopathy thing we dealt with like last week, where we discussed, where like cures like, how that philosophy clearly doesn't work. How the fuck would it work? How would you cure like with like? This is mental illness being treated with more mental illness. This is indulgence. This is like giving a drug addict drugs. It's not play therapy any more than a guy who thinks he's Napoleon gets French therapy, where he's allowed to gallivant around town on a fucking horse and pretend he's a general and everyone has to take him seriously. That's not the way this works. I don't know why I keep saying that sentence. Why is everything broken, Michael? This isn't the way it works. And that's not even the way time works, last week I was playing with my little sister, and I was 8 and she was 9, and she said I was 9 and she was 8, and then she said, "Oh, but I want you to be the little sister." So I've been 6 ever since. How the fuck does that work? Well, you can just change things. It shows you how arbitrary and transient your life is when you can just change it like that. When it basically confirms that everything you believe in your entire life is a lie. If you can change it like that. Nothing means anything. And how the fuck would a world function like that? We have passports. We have you have to program your age into Sky and stuff to see certain types of risque things. You have to program your age into fucking any account you have online. If everyone was just changing their age like a fucking 40-year-old woman, then we'd never be able to function as a society. Everything would be fucked. Again, I think I used this analogy before, where he said how the world almost broke when Y2K happened, and computers had to go back like a second or something like that. And it fucked up everyone's clock. Imagine if everyone lived their life like this fucker. Oh, well, yesterday I was 9, now I'm 6. Really? Are you? Sure you are. Ugh. And on that note, we're going to wrap it up for this episode. So, business as usual. Do pop in any submissions you have, pictures, videos, articles, topics. And like I said last week, guests. If you want to hear someone, if you want to, have an interview on here, by all means, recommend someone. You won't win the lottery unless you buy a ticket. So, all that can happen is we can ask. You can recommend anything like that. Or again, just tell me to go fuck myself. It's absolutely all right. Welcome to the internet. We have, thank you to Whack here in Belsize Park for hosting us. And also do be sure to click the PayPal link down below and donate to the show. If you like what you hear, please do support it, and it will mean more content coming your way. So with that, I've been your host, Sean Hartnett. Take it easy. See you next week.